Y'all wanna know something funny? I've been sitting here trying to figure out how to start this video, and the only conclusion I've come to is to just start it. So I literally just hit the record button, and we're gonna try to do this in one take. Today is May 6th, 2026, and I'm recording this thing in real time. So by the time you see it, it'll probably only be just a few minutes old. If I can be honest, I'm a little late with this. It is something that should have been out months ago, and really, honestly, years ago. This has been something I've been sitting on for too long, but kind of like I open it up. Sometimes it's, how do I start this thing? How do I merge two worlds that I find myself living? And so for many of you that know me, this video will not be a surprise. The only surprise part about it is like, man, you finally put this out. That is true. But for those who don't know me, and one half of me is the CEO and founder of Review Taylor, Atlanta-based HR tech startup. And we've been on this journey in the tech space for a couple years now. But there's always been another part of me that never made the front pages on LinkedIn. Some know that I've spent the last year kicking off a podcast where I have conversations with people, everyday people, who wanted to share their testimonies. And that's been super successful, but it still wasn't the thing that I was supposed to be doing in the vision that I got many years ago, almost 10 years ago now. So here it is. We all know the statistics. Over 90% of startups fail, right? That's a number that when I joined this tech space, I was like, how is that even possible? How are we okay with that? That's a whole nother conversation. Over 90% of startups fail. Another thing I saw was that I would go into certain spaces, certain events, certain conferences, certain rooms, and I didn't always see where faith and God had a seat at the table, virtual table. And that is another thing that stuck with me. And so God had already given me this vision many years ago that testimonies needed a home in our everyday life. And so I didn't set out to be in technology. I didn't even set out to be in leadership, if I could be fully transparent. But somehow, some way, 15 plus years later, here we are. And so I asked the question, what would happen if we gave God a seat at the uppermost portion of our org charts? Yeah, I know that's usually reserved for the CEO. But what would happen if we gave God that seat? All right, put God at the front and center of our lives as tech founders, as builders, as creatives. What will happen? As I start joining workplace ministries in person as well as virtually, I started to see that there was this whole community of believers out there, but there's not always a space for them to be forward-facing with their faith. As I was sitting on this idea, I remember watching a podcast of a founder that I knew was a believer. We've been in the same ministry spaces, and in that podcast, it was about an hour long, there were several questions asked. What's your motivation? What drives you? What's been the fuel behind your business? All of the things. And I was like, okay, this is going to be the question where this person boldly says, God did, all right? And I didn't hear it at all. And that was a final push, as if I needed another push to get started and really to be obedient. I was like, man, Lord, I see what you mean. I see how it looks. I see how it feels to know that you're behind the success of an entrepreneur. You're behind the success of a company. But when we get on these platforms, when we get in these rooms, your name is silent. Your name is absent. We're not spreading the goodness there. So we all know the classic pitch competition. Some people love them, some people hate them. I won't share my answer there. But Testify and Pitch, plainly put, is a merger of testimony sharing and the traditional pitch format. Here's the kicker. Before we even jump into pitching your startup or pitching what you're building, what you're creating, surprise, we're starting with the foundational piece. How your faith has carried you through that entrepreneurial journey. Maybe sharing a time when that was tested and how your faith and how God showed up for you in those moments. Because there's a lot of stories that I'm hearing from great people that I've been able to interview where on the surface, it looks like they have it all together. It looks like they're on this list, the 30 under 30, to whatever under whatever. But there's a whole engine of faith behind those success stories, as well as a whole list of examples when they actually went through some challenges. And so the more we can share that information, I think the better we'll be equipped as builders in this space to go forth and conquer. And I would like to think, silly old man, that 90+% of startups that fail, as we start integrating faith in these rooms that faith is not traditionally inserted in, then that number will start to shift. That's my crazy, wild belief. So we've already kicked off a podcast version of this event format. Some amazing guests. And there's already been some crazy testimonies coming out of their willingness to be obedient to share their stories. I don't want to get too ahead of myself in sharing those, but the first that you'll see is a series of interviews that I've been silently conducting behind the scenes, even before this announcement today. The second is an in-person event. I hadn't publicly shared this, but Testify and Pitch is an event concept, an in-person event concept. And prayerfully, we'll have an announcement pretty soon on our very first in-person event in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Gotta start in the home city. Gotta start in the ATL first. All right. So, man, I want to say thank you to everyone who's been supporting me, whether that's when I was in the corporate space, whether that's when I ventured away and took the initial leap of faith to start working on a tech startup full time. And then for those of you who are going to say, you know what, I love what you're building. I love the heartbeat behind Testify and Pitch. Let me join along on this journey. Thank you in advance. So feel free to follow the page, follow the LinkedIn page, follow the Instagram page, visit our website, drop your email. I don't even have time to spam you, so you don't have to worry about that. But you will be first to be notified of our very first in-person event. It's coming real soon. It's kind of scary. So you will be first to hear about. You'll be first to be notified about our first incoming. Y'all know what I'm trying to say. All right. Thank y'all.